for joining us, and audio only. But we are emailing the slides over, so hopefully you'll be able to catch up with those and they'll make sense to you as we start talking. So Sue and I are really thrilled to be talking about adapting to change on this webinar, because I know it's a topic that's at top of mind for lots of different organisations at the moment. What we thought is, given that we've literally got 30 minutes, is looking at one particular area of this, is talk about how you develop what we call catalytic leaders in your organisation to really help drive change. So that's what we're going to be on. What we mean by catalytic leadership, we'll talk a little bit about that, what the 6 components of catalytic leadership are, and so those of you that have been to our breakfast event recently, we'll be talking about some of those same components. We're also going to talk about why having a powerful why is important, and also how you sustain an agile mindset with that as well. And so if you want to be a catalytic leader or develop people in your business, and sometimes they can be junior people that still have a leadership remit, but the power of their why and how they can change their mindset. And then what we really believe is one of the keys to agility and catalytic leadership is understanding, measuring and rewarding motivation. I know some of you are more familiar with motivation, and some of you have actually had your motivation maps done, so you've got a bit of a head start on other people on the webinar. But we're going to talk about the importance of that and how that can really help drive more catalytic leadership. And then by the end, just hopefully stimulating you to think about some more steps that you personally might want to take, or that you could take in your organisation. So the first thing is a bit like, what are catalytic leaders? And, you know, catalytic leaders are leaders for us that are real change agents in an organisation. It's not a hierarchical type of leadership, so it's not necessarily leaders at the top of the organisation, or they might be, but it's more a mindset that people in any leadership position throughout the organisation can have, that can create a lot more agility in the business. And I think there's a real view now that, you know, in large organisations, there's a need to have roles and responsibilities and have structure and have a certain degree of hierarchy. But having a second really network system of people who are change agents, whether they're in leadership positions or not, who are really well networked in the organisation and can be catalysts for other people's success, can really help boost adaptability and agility. And the thing about a catalyst is you're used in small amounts to create a huge difference. And so part of what we sort of like to teach catalytic leaders is how they can be incredibly impactful, but in short bursts. So it's not all of their role, it's part of their role, but it's actually not really their role, it's their mindset and who they're being, and how they can really engender that sort of empowering catalytic way of being to cascade it to a business. So as part of that, what we want to talk about is 6 ways of being more catalytic in the business. And you'll probably start to think about people that you know who are more change catalysts, and they are more open to being adaptable, thinking on their feet, being agile, but still retaining some of the strategy that you're trying to deliver as a business at the same time. And in research that we've done over the last 12 months, these are the 6 key elements that have been coming out of it. That what makes a leader catalytic, have an impact, be a change agent, is they're very purposeful and they've got a really powerful why. And I know Sue's going to talk about that in a minute. But they've also got an agile mindset. So they're very good at rewiring their brain, and equally they can help other people rewire their brain and use neuroplasticity to its full extent. But at the same time, it's not good enough just to have a why and to have the right mindset. You really need to be motivated and understand your motivation and have that drive and cascade that drive and support other people to get in touch with their motivation. And those 3 things at the top are really important, but over and above that too is a catalytic leader, however senior or junior they are in the organisation, needs to have high impact communication skills. So to link with the why, they need to be good storytellers, but they also need to be good coaches and mentors. And they need to be able to ask the right questions, give the right reflections, be fantastic listeners, and really be able to catalyse other people to leverage their strength and their ability in the organisation. And the power of community and network is key. So what we've noticed is in the catalytic leaders we've been studying is they're really good natural networkers. They wouldn't even necessarily call themselves that, but they're just very connected in their organisation. They're very good at managing their own stakeholders and quite naturally knowing who to connect with. And they sort of have their finger on the pulse of who's the go-to person for different things in the organisation, which helps them be even more adaptable. And part of it as well is if adaptability and if ability to change is being measured, and that might be through engagement surveys or measuring sort of motivation and change, people are, and it's rewarded, people are much more likely to deliver against it. So before I hand over to Sue to really talk about why and the agile mindset, I'm curious of those 6 things. If you've got a chat box, if you could put in which one of those 6 do you think would make the biggest difference in your organisation? And if you haven't got a chat box and you're on the phone, if you'd like to share of those 6 things, which one do you think is most significant for your business? Sue, can you see the chat box?
Right, well, I can see the chat box. If you've got a chat box, it's in below the screen, and there's a little bubble saying chat, and you can say everyone, you can send a message to everyone.
Does anybody like to share from their own perspective, if you're on the phone, what you think of those 6 components is the most important for your organisation?
It's Emily here at Macmillan. I think for us, it's understanding what motivates people, particularly for the change agents we want to work with. So that's something we really want to focus on, find out what their motivations are so that we're making sure we're talking to them in the right way.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Does anyone agree with Emily, or has anyone got something else that they think is more relevant for their organisation? Mel, have we still got
Penny here.
Sorry.
Penny here. I think one thing that struck me from what you were saying was the sort of instinctive networking. I think there's a power in our organisation that isn't always tapped into. So it's not necessarily it's the person ability themselves, but what the contacts that they have. I thought that was an interesting comment there.
Yeah, and I think that's only increasingly. I think that's going to be more and more important. And I think, you know, there are some people who are quite naturally good at influencing people. But there are others who really benefit from learning how to better influence people, how to think about how they manage their relationships. But I think it is key, and I think it's just going to get more and more important.
Yes. Getting others to, as a catalyst, to be part of that catalyst is more powerful. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it's a key aspect of leadership is that the more senior you become in an organisation, the less you actually do the work, as Sue will talk about in her book. Sue, what's the title of your book?
Stop Doing, Start Leading, how to shift from doing the work yourself to allowing others to do it for you.
Yeah. And so, you know, part of that, great leaders are the people who know that who are the go-to people and who in their network can help them. So they don't do it all themselves. And that goes back to that whole piece of, you know, as a catalyst, you're used in small amounts to make a big difference.
Yeah.
So, Sue, if we talk about number 1, the first component about being purposeful and why.
Okay, so those of you who are using your computers, if you drag your cursor to the bottom, you get a little row of icons at the bottom, and that's where the chat box is. It suddenly appears if you drag your cursor down. Otherwise, because this is interactive, this next bit, so otherwise we'll just speak, you know, just speak up when you've got an answer. So it really is key, if you want to be a change catalyst, if you want to be adaptable to change, to really start with why, as Simon Sinek says. So what I'd like you to do is really start to reflect on the why for your organisation and for yourself. So just take a moment now to think, okay, why does it matter in my organisation that we are adaptable to change and that we get people on board with being adaptable to change? Why does that matter? Maybe think of 1 or 2 reasons, and then let's see if we can share the really key reasons to why that matters. So I'm not getting any chats up. So has anybody got any thoughts as to why it matters to your organisation to be adaptable to change? We got anything there? Any key whys there as why it matters?
It's Emily here. Well, one of the most basics is that we want to keep our staff, and things are going to be changing. So we're hoping if they can adapt to change, along with us and along with the organisation, along with the external market, we get to keep all our best people and all our staff on board.
Absolutely key to your competitiveness in the marketplace, if you like, but also that they stay relevant and you don't get a capability gap as the organisation moves on. Brilliant. Thank you, Emily. Anything else? Any other thoughts?
It's Penny here again. We're going through a tremendous amount of change here. We were taken over a couple of years ago, and then there's a bid in for us at the moment as well. So keeping the workforce motivated and being able to manage that dynamic change at the business level, but keeping the project focus going is just critical. And making sure that the company remains successful through all of that business change.
Absolutely. What happens when people are faced with change? They go into resistance, into fight, flight, and actually they're focused on themselves and on what they perceive to be the danger, as opposed to keeping going with the day job and keeping the business going. So yeah, really key to help them to really have an adaptable mindset and really see how they can adapt themselves and flow with the change and keep things going, as opposed to almost stop in their tracks and wait to see what happens. So thanks, Penny.
But and also in that respect is actually saying, look, this is a big organisational change which will impact us all, but there is that's over there. That's the second issue. What we've got to do is continue with our day jobs, with our project life, which is in our control and will ultimately impact those bigger business decisions. So it's allaying those fears, but bringing the focus back to the individual responsibilities on a day-to-day basis.
And helping them understand their personal why and how that fits with the change, and how there might even be a bigger why as to why they want to keep the day-to-day going as well. That can really help them work through those initial phases of emotional resistance to change.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move to you as individuals now in whatever your role is, and just say, okay, so why does it matter to me that I'm really effective in terms of being adaptable to change? So get your own personal why here. See if we can have anybody else participating in this. Anybody else got any thoughts about why it matters to you?
Louise here from Tesco. So I work in the HR function. So obviously we're working with people every single day, and it's so important to lead that change by example. And so important that we ensure that the people who work for us are adaptable as well, and kind of especially in a market that works around customer. So it's really, really important that I'm adaptable and that I can lead them in that change.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Louise. And sort of, we're all role modeling it. And yes, you can role model it to really support colleagues and help colleagues become more resilient and manage all the changes going on. But ultimately, it affects the customer. And so to be more adaptable to the customer and really sort of think ahead and be ahead of the curve in terms of serving the customer better and serving the customer's needs, that requires agility and quite a lightness of being. So if you can engender that with yourself and with your team, it will start to cascade out.
Great, brilliant. Can we move on to the next slide then, Carl?
Yeah.
So I won't show the clip that's at the bottom of the slide for those of you who can see it, but it's a great YouTube. So when you do get the slides, I'd recommend that you have a look at that little film. It's a really short film about neuroplasticity and very simply explains how it works. It's great to use with your people if you're trying to get them to understand how to be adaptable to change. Because at the end of the day, it's about having an agile mindset. And we all grow up with certain beliefs and certain attitudes hardwired into our brain. And in order to be agile, we have to know how to create new neural pathways to rewire our brain, as Carol said earlier. So what we're going to talk about now is how do we do that? And that requires neuroplasticity. So maybe if you go on to the next slide, Carol. So what we've come up with is the 6 R's of neuroplasticity. This is how we go about rewiring our brain. So we said a change, and you might have that initial reaction, the resistance, the shock, denial, anger, or the fight, flight, automatic response. And part of rewiring your brain to be agile is understanding how to interrupt that response, how to create a little space where you can choose to have a different response to the change. So that requires maybe some reflecting skills, so the ability to stand back and reflect on what's happening, reflect on your why, on the bigger picture, and move through those early emotional stages of resistance to the change to get to acceptance more quickly, so that you can actually start to work with the change and understand what it requires of you. And then once you've understood what it requires of you in terms of maybe shifting behavior, shifting an attitude, then neuroscience has shown us that if we repeat that new attitude, that new behavior over and over again, and each time we do it, notice the response and refine our behavior and our reaction, then we start to create a new neural pathway. That can take time, it takes patience, but ultimately a new neural pathway will be recreated, and you'll actually be rewiring your brain to be in tune with how you're required to behave, what the change requires of you. And as a leader or as somebody in HR, you can help people to focus on what's required. So let's say you are a customer service department and you want to focus people on delighting your customers. And when you have your team meetings, you wouldn't ask them what problems customers have experienced in the last month. You might say, so what have you done recently that delighted customers, and how can you do more of that? So if you focus people on what you want to see, that helps with the rewiring. And then it's enabling them to review how they're doing against the desired behaviours, the new beliefs, the new attitudes that fit with the change. And that reviewing can happen in small communities of peer groups where they support each other through the change. It can happen in one-to-ones where you maybe support them as a line manager. It can happen maybe they have a colleague who's a buddy who supports them. But as we go through change, as we go through that process, it's important to get support, encouragement, particularly because that helps our brain to reinforce the rewiring and helps us move through to really embed and establish that new mindset. Okay, we move on to the next one, Carol. So it's all about having an agile mindset. So why does mindset matter so much? Some of you may be aware that neuroscience has shown us that we've all got mirror neurons. That's why these people are facing each other. So if you come into work in a bad mood in the morning, then other people sitting in the same area as you will pick up on that almost unconsciously. Sort of from the brain waves that are going out from you, they'll pick up on your mood and you will affect the environment around you. So we all need to be aware of our own impact day to day. And particularly if you're a leader, if you're in HR and you want to be a role model for the sort of behaviours you want to see in the culture, then it's really being aware of the mirror neurons and the impact that they're having, and recognising that 70% of what happens in your organization will be from imitating the leaders and the change catalysts in the organisation. So it's managing your mindset to create a culture that's the environment that you need for the change to be successful. Over to you, Carol.
Thank you, Sue. So we've talked about, what makes a catalytic leader is them having a really powerful why and being able to tell stories around that, but equally being able to be agile in their mindset and support people to change their own behaviour as well as them change their own attitude. The third aspect, and I know several people said that this was relevant for their organisation, is you're much more likely to be catalytic and have an impact on people if you really understand fundamentally what motivates and drives them. And motivation are our inner drivers. and they determine how we feel, how we behave, how we act day to day. And I think there's a real sort of missed opportunity in quite a few organisations to really understand what it is that drives people. And quite often, I think leaders who aren't particularly well developed tend to assume that what motivates them is what motivates other people. And we'll know in HR that you'll quite often get somebody coming up to you saying, I want to keep this person, they're a really talented individual, I need to promote them, or I need to pay them more because I don't want to lose them. And yes, financial well-being is definitely a motivator for some, but it's only one of 9 motivators, and there are other things that are important. So those of you that are familiar with this, and some of you actually probably know what motivates you, but if a leader can really understand whether people are driven by relationships and their sort of networks at work and their teams that they're in, or whether they're driven by a sense of achievement and the goals they've set themselves and the targets they're aiming to hit, or whether they're more driven by growth and growing new ideas and being innovative, growing other people, or even growing themselves. If you understand that, you can make a real difference into how they approach change. And what's interesting is that people who are more relationship orientated, they're slower to change, and they're maybe slightly less agile initially because they're very good at preserving what's been built up. They like preserving the past. So those people might not be great change agents for your business in the first instance. The people with growth motivators, so the people that love innovating, who love freedom and autonomy and like to make a difference, they're the ones that tend to have a higher propensity for change and are more likely to be agile more quickly. So they're often the people that you might pick first to help you really support the catalytic growth and change across a business. And they're the people whose mirror neurons you can then use to help other people. I do think it's useful to have a blend of people, but people who are growth orientated, and I suspect quite a few of the people on this webinar are growth orientated, they're great role models for cascading this and supporting other people because they really thrive on change. So the growth motivators are people who are quite creative, they love innovation, and you'll probably know people in your business who are like this. They're always coming up with new ideas, they're always wanting to improve things. And that might be you, or that might be somebody in your business that you know, or in your team that you know. But people with strong creator motivator are really great change agents, and typically are very good at being catalytic leaders. The spirit links in with Dan Pink's work on autonomy. They like freedom and independence and being able to make their own decisions. But as long as they're in agreement with the overall change, then they can thoroughly enjoy it too. The searchers like to seek meaning and making a difference. So the power of why and having a purpose is really important to them. But anybody with those drivers will find change more easy. But what's really interesting is to understand your business and see how many people are really driven by growth, or, are we driven by achievement? And there will be a high propensity of people in a business who've got a director motivator, who like power and influence over people, or who do want more of the commercial benefits of what they do, and they come to work to earn money and ideally above average standard of living. But you'll also have experts who want knowledge and mastery and want to be a real specialist in a particular subject, or a go-to person, and that's what motivates them. I think it's actually really healthy when you're really developing catalytic leaders to have some leaders who've got quite strong relationship motivators. They're often the skeptical ones at the beginning around change and adaptability. The defender likes security and predictability and stability, and so doesn't like change for change's sake. But once a defender gets their head around the change and realizes the benefits to themselves and the business for the changes, they can actually be really powerful. And you'll all know the benefits of changing someone who's skeptical into someone who's really pro a decision. So getting your defenders on board is great. The friends can often be quite hurt by change because they're the connectors in a business. And we've spoken before about the power of catalytic leaders having networks. So friends are important catalytic leaders, but they don't like change if you're not consulting the people and taking people into consideration as part of it, because for them, fulfilling relationships is what motivates them at work. And the star will take the change on board if they can be one of the leading lights around it, because they like the recognition, the respect and social esteem around what change brings. So I think if you understand what motivates people and then drives them, ideally when James Sell, who's developed motivational maps, was creating the tool, he analysed 20,000 maps. And typically on average across 20,000 people, they were roughly about 60 or just under 60% motivated. So at FPG, we spend a lot of time educating organisations about motivation. And in an ideal world, your organisation is going to be a lot more adaptable to change, and you're going to have a lot more catalytic leaders who can really develop more competitive advantage for your business if you've got more people with motivation of 80% or more in the optimal zone. So Sue and I spend a lot of our life coaching and developing people to help them get into the optimal zone, and having catalytic leaders who support people to do that can really make a difference. And what's fascinating is you can map teams and start to look at not only, you know, what is a colleague's propensity for change, but also what's the team change index score. And this was a test we did on a team at the end of last year, and they came out about 66% as a propensity to change. But what we find is that we've been mapping some HR teams, and their propensity to change and their change index scores, typically in HR, 80% or more, which is showing us that they are the real drivers that can support adaptability in a business. But equally, if you can find hot buttons and strategies for other people who've got high change index scores, they can be part of your catalytic leadership team. So I think there's a value in being able to map individuals and look at what motivates them and how adaptable they are to change, but also getting a change index score for different teams and seeing which teams could actually create the mirror neurons for the rest of a department. You know, which teams are more likely to change and could be the role models, and who can really help the rest of the business. The overall motivational mapping can actually help look at how ready an organisation is to change, and running profiles in 6-month gaps or even a year gap can actually see the difference between where an organisation is or where a team or department is now versus 12 months ahead. So it's a good way of actually mapping progress and seeing how motivated people are and how change aware and adaptable they are. So Sue, can I sort of leave you to sort of clarify next steps?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess really what we'd like people to think about is which of these areas are appropriate for your organisation. So when you thought about your why does this matter to your organisation? Where are you as an organisation in terms of your adaptability to change? And which of these strategies would be most helpful for you? If you'd like to talk to us about motivational maps, we'd be very happy to talk to you. But equally, if you'd like us to support you in finding your why and helping everybody with that, then equally that'd be for us.
Has anybody any questions? I'm mindful that we've probably got like a minute to the past. If anyone who's listening and is intrigued by motivational maps, and I know several of you are on the call have already done their map and had a debrief, but if anybody else is interested to learn more about it, please just send an email. My email is Carol with me on the end at fullpotentialgroup.com, and we'll send you a link to do it so you can get more of a flavour for what it is and get a bit more of a sense of how catalytic are you and how adaptable are you. But I hope this has been helpful. We will send out slide decks to everyone if you've not managed to actually see the slides we were talking about. And if you've got any questions, please don't feel free to come to us, and hopefully we'll be able to help. But many thanks, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you.